In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The voice of spirit.
The voice of spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, welcome to Core Radio. You're listening to Leo Bonomo, the voice of spirit, and help to give me a very warm welcome to a very good friend of mine, John West. John West is certainly a man of many talents. He's an actor, presenter, author, historian, musician. That's enough for now. But you read tarot as well, don't you, John?
I'm a male model as well. No, I'm only joking. Yeah, I do tarot as well. Yeah. Viva Las Vegas, by the way. That's what I've got to say.
Fantastic. Yeah, he's a bit of an Elvis fan, the Beatles, and really of that era. There's a lot of great music from that era, isn't there?
Oh, there is, Leo. I mean, I wasn't born when the Beatles started, or certainly Elvis, but, you know, that's classic music, and that will live on forever. And 1,000 years from now, if the Earth still exists, I'll be playing Beatle music, Elvis music, Frank Sinatra as well, you know. All good stuff. Yeah. Love it all. I prefer the older stuff, though. I'm not so keen on the modern music.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Now, tell us a little bit about your background, because you started, well, you didn't start off, obviously you started off very small, as we all do.
But my dad used to say, yeah.
Yeah. So you got interested in history, didn't you? And you became a historian.
Yeah, well, I was born in North London, and none of my family were into history at all. You know, there was no background there. And at the age of nine always pops up in important times of my life, funny enough. But at the age of 9, I went to a town called St Albans in England, which was a Roman city originally. And I just really got fascinated with the Roman period. It's like as if I knew it, I'd been there. And that really developed my interest in history. And then I developed interest in other periods, English Civil War, Napoleonic, Second World War, the Saxons. And I just carried on reading books. And then I thought, well, I've got all this knowledge, I might as well start publishing. So in the 90s, I wrote several books, some on the Romans, Roman Lincoln, Roman York, one on Oliver Cromwell. Also did one on Victorian murders, because technically that's history as well. And I've never looked back, really. And I should say my Roman Lincoln book was actually turned into a BBC radio documentary, which I co-presented. So I love history, always been fascinated by it. And if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. And on top of that, you know, I collect history stuff as well. I've got Roman pottery, coins, all sorts. So my flat's like a bit of a museum.
Well, that always makes it interesting. And coincidentally, I found out something interesting about myself today. I was having venesection, so they take blood, and that's for a condition called hemochromatosis. And I've been having that done, I think about 15 years now, something like that. And I was talking to the nurse, and she says, "Oh, they call that the Celtic curse."
Do they now?
Yeah, and I said, I've never heard that. And she was telling me a little bit about it. And there's a Celtic, I've obviously got some Celtic in me. So it could be Scottish, possibly Welsh, Scandinavian. And she was talking about that. And she says one of the things with hemochromatosis, which is iron overload, is you don't feel the cold. And I never used to when I was young. And then I went through a period of feeling it. But now I've got older, I don't really feel the cold very much either. So it was quite striking.
Well, I didn't know you had Celtic ancestry, because coincidentally I have as well. I've got Welsh ancestry on both sides of my family. We did some sort of looking back. And my great-great-grandmother was German, Schulhoff, and she went to Wales. We don't know why she left Germany, but she went to Wales and married a Welshman. So I've got Celtic blood. And they do say that people who've got Celtic blood are more psychically inclined and pick things up that perhaps Anglo-Saxons, or as the Scot would say, Sassenachs, is it? Haven't got.
Sassenachs, yeah.
Sassenachs.
Hey, Sassenach. Yeah.
Guidance.
Yes. So, and it's quite strange because I've got a gentleman, another good friend of mine, Jock Brokers, who we'll have on the show at some point, and Jock is obviously Scottish. Is president of the RSSMPI, of which I'm UK director. But we were having a chat when I was over in the States talking to him, and we sat in circle. He's a physical medium, as well as many other things, and a Scottish connection was established. And there were times when I would feel myself to be very Scottish, and the Scottish accent would kind of leak out, and it would sometimes be for hours at a time or just days.
Right.
And so there was an incline towards Scotland there. So when this lady told me about that, I can understand where the Scottish connection comes in. And there's obviously a Scottish guide as well. But it was it's strange how this information sort of leaks through, isn't it? You know, I would never have connected ancestry with going to give blood. But there you go.
It's very liberating wearing a kilt, apparently, Leo, but I wouldn't advise you to go out in the wind.
No.
I'm sorry about that. I do a bit of comedy as well, you see. You didn't mention that.
I didn't mention that, yeah. It was rather a long list, and I was going to work my way down, but I'm sure you'll
get
fill in.
We'll get to the Eric Morecambe comedy stuff later.
Absolutely. Now, a great interest of yours is, and many other people's, is Jack the Ripper, isn't it? And how did you become interested in that?
Well, that was my late mother's fault. She was blamed. I can blame her for loads of things, but she had a book called The Complete Jack the Ripper by an English policeman called Donald Rumbelow, and it's still in print now. And it was basically just a basic account of all the murders and sort of some of the theories. And I read it as a kid. I shouldn't have done. She probably would have told me off because I was a bit too young, but it fascinated me. And that interest has never left me. I'm very interested in murders that were never solved. And obviously the Jack the Ripper, there's that sort of mythic image of him, you know, the fog-bound streets of London, the top hat, the cloak, the doctor's bag, none of which ever happened, I hasten to add. That's fiction. That you can blame Hollywood and Victorian writers for that. Yeah. But I just find it such an interesting case, you know, that London was the largest city on the planet at that time. You know, efficient police force for the time, and yet he just roamed at will, killed women, and the police didn't have a clue. I know there were various suspects that they pursued, but, you know, all these years later, we still don't know who it was, and I don't think we ever will. I mean, Americans have been accused of being the Ripper. There was a Dr. Tumblety. Lewis Carroll was accused of being Jack the Ripper, even Conan Doyle. I'm surprised Queen Victoria hasn't, but I'm sure someone will eventually.
Well, there was some alluding to a member of the royal family that had been, who'd been in an asylum, and that's the reason why it couldn't be discovered, because obviously it's been blocked at a very top level. But as you say, we may never know.
The thing with Duke of Clarence, that was first made public in the early 70s. I can't remember the chap's name. But he was the grandson of Queen Victoria, and it was claimed that he caught syphilis from a prostitute, and he was going mad, and he went out killing prostitutes. But the thing was, I hate to dispel this legend that he was a member of the royal family, but they had the court rolls back then. I think they've still got them, actually. You can look them up and find out where members of the royal family were. And on one of the murders, he was in Scotland. Now, obviously, I know you could turn around and say, oh, it was all faked. You know, they faked the rolls and he was actually down in Whitechapel. But I don't believe that. I don't believe it was him. And but I am aware of, obviously, the legend that they faked his death, because officially he died of influenza and was buried at Windsor, if memory serves. But they said that he was stuck in an asylum and died in the 1920s or something. But I don't subscribe to that. But I'm sure some of your listeners probably will disagree with me. And that's fine. That's democracy and everything like that. I have my own theories as to Jack the Ripper, but again, like I said, there's so many suspects, Leo. There's too many to pick, really.
Yeah, I think I saw a site and there was over 50 on there.
There's more than that now. More than that.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to be anyone and his dog that it's a big money making thing as well, isn't it? Because there are series, there are lots of films, lots of people sell books,
Wolves.
so
Yeah,
it's a
wolves.
big thing. Yeah.
But the thing is with the Jack the Ripper business, it's become an industry because virtually every month books come out, and there's even like a Jack the Ripper knick-knack industry. You can buy dolls, T-shirts, games,
Oh,
pens. There's a Jack the Ripper museum in the Whitechapel area, and they tried to close it down actually because they said they thought it was disgusting that they'd opened a museum about a serial killer. But there again, it is
yeah.
our history. But I don't know about sort of. I don't think I'd want to wear a Jack the Ripper T-shirt because I think that's probably going a little bit too far.
Yeah, I think so. I do think so. Um, okay, so tell us a little bit about the presenting because you've been involved in a lot of different shows, radio shows, TV. Give us a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, certainly. Well, the first radio I ever did was for the BBC when they turned my book Roman Lincoln into a documentary, which I cheekily insisted that I co-present, so I did. And then I regret it now, but afterwards I sort of took a back seat with the radio, and I'm a great believer in synchronicity. You know, Jung came up with that theory that there's everything for a reason. So perhaps I wasn't meant to do it at that time, but I was working in the library service in Ipswich and I wasn't enjoying the job. And a chap on my days, I wasn't there every day, came in with these leaflets about, do you want to join an FM station in Ipswich? We give you free training. And I was on the point of leaving, so I think I was meant to sort of do it. So I went and I had the training, and I ended up doing 2 breakfast shows there, 3-hour shows, twice a week, playing golden oldies, contemporary stuff, interviewing people. And I
Yeah.
took to it like a duck to water. I mean, people said to me, "You must have done radio all your life." And I said, "Well, no, I only did one program a few years ago." And I was there for about a year, and I guested on other people's shows as well. And then I left to join a station in Framlingham called Radio Castle, and I did a couple of shows there, including a paranormal chat show. And I interviewed you, Leo, if you remember.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I know that you've interviewed me a few times now. I can't remember how many. I think 4 or 5 actually over the years.
Yeah, I think it is. And then I became station manager. Sadly, the station folded because they couldn't get the funding. And then I sort of moved on to Felixstowe Radio for a few months, which is Felixstowe's on the east coast. It's got a Jack the Ripper connection. Apparently, one of the suspects used to stay there, a chap called Stevens, who was apparently the lover of the Duke of Clarence. So, but that's another story. And then I moved on to Harbour Radio, which is based in Great Yarmouth, and I did a show there. And now I'm with Smart Radio, which is also based in Great Yarmouth, and I do a show there every Tuesday afternoon. It's called 20th Century Boy. I play golden oldies. I used to do Tuesday mornings, but now I alternate with a wonderful chap called Adam Gamage, who's a fellow actor, and he does a movie magic show. So we sort of do other alternate weeks, shall we say.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that keeps you out of trouble. There's plenty to be getting on with.
It does. Well, that's the radio for you. But as far as TV goes, I'm not boring you, by the way. Am I going about all this?
Not at all, no.
But I approached Mustard TV, which was a regional TV station in Norfolk, and I basically pestered them and said, "Well, look, I'm into history. Can I come on and be a historian?" And it took me about 20 emails or phone calls to get on there because they weren't very good at getting back to me, Leo, as you know, some media companies. And I ended up being on there, and again, they sort of said I was really natural, and I kept being invited back. I talked about the Romans, folklore, even the Beatles once. So when they went to Norwich, they won an only time back in 1963. Before they really made it big, but they'd had their first #1. So I got on really well with them. I was going to get my own regular monthly slot, but unfortunately, they didn't have the funding, and then the station folded, which was a shame. So, but I am going to be joining another TV company. It's actually a TV series. I can't say too much about it, but it is history and walks based, and it is actually shown on a channel in America. It's also shown on several channels in the UK, and also it won an award last year for the best new series, which I'm pleased about. And 21 million people have watched it so far. So I shall be basically walking around, Leo, talking about history and perhaps even the odd ghost story. Who knows?
Yeah, because that's something else that draws us together, isn't it? The love of the occult and the involvement
Mm.
with it, and
Well,
uh,
again, I've been interested in, and this was my mum's fault again. God bless her up there in heaven. She had loads of books on ghosts, and I used to read them. And the covers fascinated me. I've always had things about, really being into the Gothic and that, and all these
yeah,
wonderful pictures on the covers of books of these Gothic-looking ladies in ruined churches and ghosts, and that hooked me. And like I said, I've been interested in ghosts ever since then. And I write about them too, which is good. So yeah, love me ghost stories. I write for Psychic News every month, which is a magazine sold in America, and I've written about Borley Rectory and loads of different subjects. Too many to mention. But Jack the Ripper's in there as well, about the haunted sites, because his ghost is still supposed to lurk the East End.
yes. I mean, I think you've done this as well. I went on a Jack the Ripper tour, and I chose a wonderful time of year when I did it, quite some years ago now, and it was November, and there was an actor that was the tour guide, so there were bits and pieces of this acted, and it was a great tour. But it was also quite foggy that night, and I deliberately kind of went on that time to sort of get the atmosphere, as you say, that we see in films and that, the mists parting and the top hat and that. And it was a very, very good tour. It's very entertaining and very factual, because some of the murder scenes, the physical places there have gone, haven't they? They've not only changed road names.
They have. Basically, up until the 1950s, Leo, all of the murder sites were relatively intact.
Yeah.
And then, like many places around England at that time, they decided to demolish all the old buildings, the slums. If it was old, knock it down was sadly the attitude. They even demolished Georgian buildings in Bath, which now would never happen. But
Yeah.
all the old murder sites were demolished. I think there's only one, Mitre Square, which is relatively as it was in the Victorian period. It's still got the cobbles there. Although where the woman was murdered is now a flower bed. They deliberately covered that up. But even to this day, the area is supposed to be haunted. There's various spots where people have heard screams, scuffles, and they've gone there and there's been no one there. Figures have been seen. Hanbury Street, for years after the murders, people kept seeing this man and a woman walking into the yard where the murder was committed. And when they went in there after him, there was no one there. So, but yeah, so a very haunted place. But I do have a theory with that. It was probably just recordings, the intense emotions and that, what happened. And they start to wind down, because there don't seem to be many reports now of any sort of, happenings there. And obviously, if you're demolishing the old buildings and that sometimes can erase the tape, shall we say.
Absolutely, because it's in the fabric, isn't it? And
It is. Yes.
I know that there are two types of ghostly happenings, and as you say, one is a recording, and it's non-interactive. It's just something that plays, and people will experience it if they're there and see and feel things. And the other is the interactive ghost connection, where they will react to you, and sometimes people get attacked, don't they, or they feel a little nudge or a push and that. So there are two basic types there. I know that I went into the 10 Bells, where the last murder victim, I believe, used to frequent the pub. And
apparently, Leo, all the murder victims drank there, and there's also a theory that Jack the Ripper may have drank there. And the 10 Bells is supposed to be haunted by a woman as well, and there is a theory she's supposed to be one of the victims. No one knows which one, but for a time, I think about 20-30 years, it was called the Jack the Ripper pub. And then when there was the 100th anniversary of the Ripper murders, there was this campaign to change the name, because people said it was disrespectful to the victims to name, again, a pub after a serial killer. So they changed it back to the 10 Bells. But it is a pub, apparently, and I'm not just talking about the spirits in the bottles.
No, exactly. And I mean, I went there, and you're right. They were selling T-shirts and pens and thing, and a little bit of an industry within the pub. But I couldn't feel anything at all, let alone adverse in the pub. But it was a good experience to have. We have talked in the past, haven't we, about you going to the States and having a series and that. And
Yeah.
this seems to be working, doesn't it? Because you're getting more connections with the States now.
Well, yeah, as I said, I write for Psychic News every month, and that's sold. It's sold in every state in America now. They did a deal with one of the big companies over there. One of these super. I don't know if you call them supermarkets in the States, but so that it's sold over there, so people are aware of my work there. And I do actually occasionally get the odd fan letter from America saying, "Oh, we think your articles are wonderful," which is flattering. And obviously, this TV series I'm going to be doing will be shown in the States. There is that connection, and obviously, as you're a medium, Leo, I do remember you telling me years ago that you got me working in the States. So it looks like that's going to finally come to pass. I wouldn't mind doing a ghost hunting show over there. If there's any ghost hunters who are doing TV shows over there, I'm happy to be the historian. You can check out my work in Psychic News. I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Oh, they have a plethora of psychic shows over there, and they come from the sort of more of the horror angle, and there are one or two there that go there with the intention of riling up the ghost and I actually hate the word ghost, I've got to say, but right, yeah. I mean, it's just a spirit. If it's an interactive thing, it's just a spirit in a form. But I suppose ghost is as good a description. And there's some series there, and they go there to deliberately irritate and anger the ghost and get a reaction. And I don't think, to my mind, that's not a good thing to do.
I agree. I mean, obviously, with these TV shows to do with the paranormal, they've got to sensationalise stuff for the viewers, because if they just go there and nothing happens. And it does irritate me somewhat when I won't name any of the shows, but when they say, "Oh, this is demonic," and it just seems that like something happened to you, it's immediately a demon. And I thought, well, where are you getting that from? Why's it got to be a demon? And you're quite right, they do. I mean, there's a show over here in England, and I won't name it, but they actually go out, and I've seen clips, and they're swearing, "Come on, you make yourself known to us." I thought, well, if I was a ghost, a self-respecting ghost, and someone was effing and blinding at me, I wouldn't appear for them. So why would I? I'd ignore it, go off and have a cup of tea in Spirit Land.
Go and rattle some chains somewhere. Yeah, I absolutely.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. We're going to run into a break shortly, and after that we'll discuss you reading the tarot, and we've got a whole bunch of things to talk about this evening, so we'll talk about that, and we'll just go into the break, and we'll be straight back after this.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors.
We interrupt to bring you this.
Would you like to advertise on KCOR Digital Radio Network?
This is what I'm talking about!
At a fraction of the cost of traditional radio advertising, why not?
Tell them the good news.
Whether you need to promote your next book, product, or service, we can customize a package for just about any budget.
Finally, there is hope for the hopeless.
Why limit yourself to a tiny local market when KCOR can brand you to the world?
Here's all you do.
Visit KCORradio.com or contact our sales department by email at saleskcorradio.com.
We want it now!
See the difference with us by letting us work for you.
This ain't reality TV!
The KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Dear John, uncontrolled high blood pressure is serious, and I can quit whenever I want. But when I quit, you quit. Sincerely, your heart.
To get your high blood pressure to a healthy range, visit heart.org/blood pressure. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Thursday nights are about to get weird on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Join hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz as they go exploring the bizarre. Jet across the cosmos with two of the most electrifying paranormal researchers in the known universe. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Exploring the bizarre takes you deep within the world of the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology. It's time to take back the night with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. Exploring the bizarre. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Only on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Incoming message.
In a digital world infiltrated by government as well as civilian disinformation, a single, powerful, and researched voice speaks through the night.
We're getting a signal.
Join Erica Lukes, the host of UFO Classified, as she interviews some of the hottest, sometimes controversial, but always informative people in the world of ufology and the paranormal.
They knew for sure that it was an alien craft, and our governments around the world have covered it up.
The reason I was taken aboard was because there was no choice. I would have been dead.
UFO Classified, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, every Friday night. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there just waiting to be discovered. But the question is, are you ready for it? UFO Classified, hosted by Erica Lukes, the new voice of the high desert. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi and welcome back. And I'm talking to John West today, a man of certainly quite varied and multi-talented. And he's also an author, and we'll talk a little bit about some of his books that he's had published. And if you do want a reading, John reads tarot. So if getting a reading tarot-wise is something you'd be interested in, then certainly keep listening. Welcome back, John. So tell us a bit about how you got involved with tarot.
Right. Well, as I said before, I've always been interested in ghosts and sort of mysteries and things like that. And I became aware of the tarot, basically reading books about, psychic stuff. And I got a pack. I know you're not supposed to buy your own pack, though. You're supposed to be given them, but I couldn't get anyone to give me them, so I had to buy my own. And I started using them, and they seemed to be quite accurate. And I did readings for friends, and they said, "Oh yeah, that came true," or what you said turns out to be correct. And then I sort of got an interest in the I Ching and the runes, so I developed it from there. And I do a bit of tarot reading on the side. It's not my main profession or anything, so but I enjoy it, and it's interesting looking at the background of tarot, because I know some theories suggest it comes from ancient Egypt. Others believe it was the gypsies in the medieval period. and that, but no one's really quite sure. But obviously, for certain, it does go back as far as the medieval period of tarot. But I find it's very accurate. I know some people don't like using it; they regard it as demonic, which I don't agree with. I just think it's it's a tool to sort of connect with spirit and look into the future. Just as the Chinese with I Ching and the Vikings with the runes. I don't think there's anything harmful in it at all.
No, I don't think there's anything harmful in it. I think because as a species, we were very much more connected to the earth. I certainly believe that the very first religion was Wicca or witchcraft, and certainly very closely connected to shamanism. And if you go back to all the old tribes, whether it's the Aborigines or the North American Indian, the Celts, whatever it might be, because at that time we were so closely aware of energies of all different kinds, we developed those things which would help us to either communicate or to foretell, because prediction to me is just an extension of that energy, that sense that we have when there's danger present, and so that would have been very very useful thousands of years ago, and so so I think it's an extension of that, and we've developed techniques, and I think as we've looked at these things and they've worked for us, and people will then become perhaps a shaman for the rest of the village to connect with and to interact with, and this is where we all used herbs, and that we had a natural understanding of which herbs would mix with what, and I think it's an extension of that, and it's quite strange, isn't it? Because sorry, go on.
It is. You're quite right. No, I just think it's sort of it's been with us since the beginning of time. Basically, I think man and woman has always had that psychic ability, and perhaps it's been suppressed, through the centuries and that. But no, I think our ancestors were more in tune with the psychic side, shall we say, like the ancient Egyptians, people like that. I think that say with prehistoric man, I think they understood it more than we do. We're very closed off in the 21st century from these things, and I'm glad to say things are now turning back, and there are more people embracing these viewpoints and that. And obviously, the Native Americans have always been in tune with spirit and still are, and the Western man is sort of embracing that as well, which is good. It's like in the 60s when people went to India, on the hippie trail, as they said, to see the Maharishi and things like that, to embrace that, because they didn't feel Western culture was enough. We needed something else, because it was all materialism and making money and acquiring goods and that. And we need more than that in life. I feel you've got to be spiritually sound and happy. You can have £1 million in the bank, which would be great, but if I know a lot of rich people are miserable, Leo.
Yeah, I agree with you. I personally think that with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and that shift that it caused, I think that's when we started to lose touch with our abilities to a great extent. And I know that you're right. Now we're getting to a point where it's much more open. People obviously used to ridicule it, and people kept very quiet, and for example, I couldn't mention to my doctor that I heard voices, because the emergency button would be pressed, and the men in white coats would come. But that's there are mediums now who are full-time doctors. There are people that practice Reiki, that actually work in the NHS. So I think as people have become more accepting of it, have lowered their fear of expressing their experiences, and it's had a snowball effect. And I think it's a wonderful thing. It brings us back to where we should be.
I agree. And of course, spiritualism, the birthplace, is actually in America, isn't it? With the Fox sisters.
The Fox sisters, yes. I'm working on an article at the moment. And when you look up the Fox sisters, there's a little bit there which is very true, and people who've had experiences of ghosts, for want of a better word, spirits, of rapping, of furniture and other things being moved or sometimes thrown about. Those people that have had those kind of energy experiences, they know that it's correct. But if you look at most of what's written about the Fox sisters, the skeptics have got in and they've said, well, you know, the Fox sisters, they admitted they faked it and that, and it's a shame. And I think it's a real shame the way Wikipedia is affected an awful lot by skeptics.
Would you know, Leo, there's actually an organisation, I can't remember the name of them, but they go around altering the Wikipedia articles to add that skeptic element. It's like if you read about Borley Rectory on there, you know, which is a famous case in England, the most haunted house in Britain, it was claimed, and a famous ghost hunter called Harry Price, who may not be that well known in America, but he certainly was in Europe and the UK. He investigated it, and there was like a nun was seen, poltergeist activity, you know, things like that. And because now they just say, oh, it's all fakery, it was all trickery, and what they ignore, and they claim Harry Price was behind a lot of it, and this other person, one of the people that was living there. But what they ignored, that these things were happening before Harry Price, and were happening long after Harry Price. And when I was there filming a drama, because the acting stuff, strange things happened when we were there. So, you know, Harry Price is long since dead and gone. So, but people are still experiencing and seeing things there. And I'm sure with Harry Price and Borley Rectory, you know, he was a showman, he was a journalist, he probably egged it up a little bit. But like anything, you know, there's always an element of truth in all these things, and just for people, the skeptics, to dismiss it, so it's a load of rubbish, you know, ghosts don't exist. And I say, well, if you know, how can you say that? You can't see radio waves, but you know they're there.
Absolutely, and again, there are many sort of examples of that. I know that there are ancient writings from the Mayans, and they describe star systems that we have only just recently, I say recently, in the last 30 years or so, have discovered that those planets, which are on their maps, are physically there. There's no way you can see them with the human eye. I mean, these are discovered by other scientific means, you know, and for that to happen, there must obviously be something there. I know that Harry Price did also help to fake some evidence. We both know Margaret Hahn, don't we?
We do, yes.
And, Margaret Hahn is Helen Duncan's great granddaughter, and Helen Duncan's a very, very famous materialization medium. She used to give a lot of predictions as well, which came true. And I'm very much in favour of prediction myself. I feel it's one thing skeptics, you know, they can't refute. Yes, there's possibly a chance of guessing that right, but you can't cold read predictions. So that's one thing that I'm very much in favour of. And in Cambridge, which is not too far from me, they've got the is it the PSI building? No, there's a psychic investigation building there, and you can go there and you can look through papers. And I noticed that Helen Duncan, now you think of it, because we're more, I suppose, media orientated, but when she had seances and spirits would appear, they would take photographs, some of them with red light, a lot of them came out. But what she also did, which now you'd think absolutely horrendous, they would do a sort of rerun of it, of what happened. So they would get dummies, and they would say, well, this is how it happened, this is where I was sitting, and this is where the spirit appear. And you can look at those photographs, and they are genuine photographs. They were taken at the time, but they're with dummies and made up, and you can see their models. Yeah. But what the skeptics have done, of course, and saying, well, this is the actual photograph, not a reconstruction, of the seance, and it's obviously a doll, it's obviously faked. And to an extent, yes, it was faked because it's a reconstruction, but of course they don't put that. And Harry Price did Helen Duncan no favours, unfortunately. It's what we've got to contend with, you know. I think for me, what puts me off skeptics is people like you and I. We don't force our views on anyone. If they want to talk about it, we talk and we explain, but we don't force our views. I never try and change anyone. But it's the opposite with skeptics, isn't it?
It is, and I'm very open-minded on things, and I will look for a rational explanation. There was a classic case where I was doing a ghost hunt in Felixstowe, Landguard Fort, which is most of it dates back from the Napoleonic times, and that it was there in the Stuart period as well, parts of it. And the door started rattling, and people, oh God, it's a ghost, and all it was basically the wind pressure was rattling the door. Yeah. So, but I checked it. And it's like some of these orbs that people get. I mean, when I look at them, it's clear that it's probably dust particles or insects or even bits of fluff. But there are people out there who just say every orb is a spirit, and it's not. So you've got to look for a rational explanation. If I go to a haunted place, I don't always automatically assume that there's a ghost there. If something happens, I'm always looking for what could cause that rationally, you know, a sort of mundane explanation, whether it's the wind or a bird flew in against a window, you know. But there are ghost hunters out there, and I hate that term, ghost hunters, as well, who would just accept anything that happened. Oh, it's a ghost, it's a ghost. The rat runs across the floor, the sound, it's a ghost. So, you know, I'm not a total believer. I'm always prepared to look for a rational explanation. And people do fake ghost stories. They do make them up. They do fake phenomena. So I'm the first to admit it. And as you say with Harry Price, although I admire him in many respects, I do believe that some of the evidence for Borley was, shall we say, exaggerated.
Yeah.
In order to
sell. I can well believe that. And I'm the same myself. I do critique knocks and bangs and things because, you know, yes, it can be the central heating. You know, if it's a 200-year-old house, the boards will settle. You know, there's all that kind of thing. So, and the interesting thing with spiritualism, I feel, and those who are true spiritualists and true scientists, we are actually skeptical, and some of the greatest proof ever, you know, if you talk about Conan Doyle and people like that, they came into spiritualism as a body absolutely defiantly wanting to disprove it. They knew or thought it was fake. They came in scientifically to destroy it. And what they actually found was it was true. And I think the best mediums and spiritualists and ghost hunters, you know, like yourself, we go in thinking, right, you know, there's probably a good explanation why this isn't supernatural.
Yeah, well, I mean, where I live in a town called Saxmundham in Suffolk, and I've got a 17th century property. Parts of it are Victorian, but most of it's 17th century. The stairs, for instance, Charles I was on the throne when they were built, and I had some.
Was that in the toilet, John? Sorry.
Sorry, say that again.
I said, was that in the toilet? It's an English joke, folks.
I'm sorry, I'm slow tonight on the old jokes. I should be better than that. But yeah, good one. Boom, boom, as they say. No, I had all these knocks and bumps, not in the toilet, and scratches, and it turned out it was a rat in between the walls. Now, I do know the odd ghost hunter would have sworn that was poltergeist activity, but I did my own little investigation and tracked down the rat, and sadly had to expel it. There you go. But this place is actually haunted. I have had experiences here twice, and people may laugh and say, oh, he's making it up, but I had a duvet pulled off me twice, physically yanked off at the bottom of the bed, and I was wide awake on both occasions, and I wasn't too impressed. And I did actually say, you know, I don't mind sharing the house with you. Can you not do that again? And they never did, actually. And this actually is connected with the bathroom. This next one, this is honest truth. I got out the shower, and I heard a woman sigh right behind me in my ear. Now, whether she was sighing with disappointment or pleasure, because I was stark naked.
I've had that myself.
That is true. So this place is haunted, but there again, those knocks and raps and scratches in the walls, that was, I'm afraid, a rodent. So it was a bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Jordan from the UK, and she Skyped in and she said, I noticed that the UK is finally jumping on the paranormal TV parade years after the US. Why is there this sudden interest in everything from the paranormal to ghosts to aliens in the UK?
In the UK, all right. Well, can I answer?
You can answer it. Yeah, and I'll answer as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, we didn't. It was America that actually I won't name the series in America, but they actually copied in format Most Haunted, which I believe started in the early years of about 2001, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but we did it first. And also in the 90s, there was a series called Castle Ghosts with Robin Hardy. I think was it Robert Hardy, the actor? I can't remember now.
Robert Hardy was definitely the actor, yeah.
Oh, Robert Hardy. I'm thinking of the director, Robin Hardy. Okay, Robert Hardy, the actor. He did one. There was a series called Ghost Hunters in the 90s as well. And way back in the 70s in the UK, there was the famous series Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World.
Absolutely. So we are going back, as you say, to the 60s with this. I mean, because of my own experiences when I was very young, I was always interested in this kind of thing. So there have been programs here in various guises, but I do think you're right. I think Most Haunted, which does kind of have a bad name. I've got to say that, and I don't mind saying that on air. There's quite a lot faked, people throwing stones and that and making noises, and it is definitely a show entertainment. But I think because that's become so popular, then I think that the United States has picked this up and given it their own twists.
They did. Yeah, I mean, you've got Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, I believe it is, and it's virtually the identical format to Most Haunted, except I don't think they use mediums. So as you say, in the 60s, I mean, there was shows on British TV about ghosts and things like that. And as a kid, I can remember like 70s and 80s, you could go in and buy books on British ghosts, and they'd be turned into documentaries and things like that. As I said, Arthur C. Clarke, that was the late 70s, and that was an English show. I know it was shown all over the world, including the States. But
that was all about aliens and his theories about aliens in Egypt in ancient times and all over the world. And of course, we've now got another program which is made in the States called Ancient Aliens. And basically, it is a format copy of what Arthur C. Clarke did many, many years ago. I remember seeing, I think it was in the paper actually, where in a cave high up on a mountain in China, they found something like 80 alien bodies, all very small, 2-3 foot high. They'd all died. Obviously, they weren't preserved in any way, and they found discs there that look, I suppose our equivalent would be of a CD, but discs, they don't know what the purpose was, and obviously they couldn't read it, but that was there. So Jordan, there was a great interest in this from, I suppose, again, the early 60s, and I think usually, as I say, America sneezes, we catch the cold. But I do think it's physically the other way around here. In which way does it differ in the US? I think the US does Hollywoodize it, does dramatize it more for the American market, obviously, and they have their own way of doing it. But it's we dramatize it.
Yeah, I have to say though, Leo, I have watched Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, and I do enjoy them. Obviously, it's like I said, the producers of those shows may disagree, but I do feel that it's a very similar format to Most Haunted. And obviously, Most Haunted was there first. But you know, I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy Most Haunted as well. I've met Richard Felix and Derek Acora on Most Haunted, so they're enjoyable shows. I'm not going to knock them or anything like that. But you know, there's been paranormal shows. You know, I was watching on YouTube actually the other week, one that was done in the 70s for the BBC with Peter Underwood, who was a very famous ghost hunter, paranormal investigator in England, and they went to Borley Rectory, and that was a whole BBC special, and that was about 1975. So, so we got there first, and I suppose you could argue that with Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone, he got there in 1959 because that was stuff about ghosts as well. I know that was fiction, but it's a good old Rod Serling. Perhaps he had a hand in it all. Who knows?
Yeah. He may. I think you know. I think he certainly helped to pique the interest in this. But we've got, you know, with great respect, America is as it is now is a few hundred years old, you know, and of course England has a much longer history, and Ireland as well is well known for being haunted, isn't it?
It is. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted countries in the world. There again, Celtic. Virtually every castle, ruined abbey, town has got its fair share of ghosts. Dublin is apparently one of the most haunted cities in the world. And no, I've never been to Ireland, but there's some fascinating ghost stories there. And I'll have to go one day, Leo, and hunt them down. I haven't actually written about any ghosts in Ireland. I must do that. I've covered ghosts in Wales, Scotland, England, of course, but I've never actually gone to Ireland. I'm going to have to do that because I don't want to leave the Irish out. I'm sorry about that, Ireland, if you're listening.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more because we're just going to go into a break, and we'll be back right after this.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit, live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The Voice of Spirit.
The Voice of Spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Voice of Spirit on Core Radio. My name's Leo Bonomo, and I've got a lovely guest here, John West, and he's talking us through some of the experiences that he's had. He's a very interesting person, as you've will hear. And if you've just joined us, then do pick up the show on archive. So welcome back, John.
Hello again, Leo, and you're lovely too.
Oh, thank you very much.
I
think I might be. Yeah. So we were talking about some of the ghosts and the shows that we have here as different from the States, and I think one of the ways that they differ, to continue answering the question that Jordan sent us, was I think the approach in England tends to be from a slightly more scientific point of view. Would you agree with that?
To an extent. I mean, I know these obviously the American ones, they do have their sort of gadgets, don't they, and they're experts and that. But yeah, I mean, for instance, the Robert Hardy series was very good. You know, sort of looking into the history and stuff like that. So it was more fact based, and also this '90s series, Ghost Hunters, they had sort of paranormal experts being interviewed and giving out all the different theories of residual hauntings. You know, the stone tape theory. So yeah, they were very scientific based, and then obviously the sensationalism came in and changed it somewhat. But again, I've got nothing against those shows, Leo. I don't want any fans of those shows listening in, or even perhaps people themselves to think I'm criticising them. I've watched them and I love them. I'd probably do a different type of show myself if I did a ghost hunting show, more sort of along the lines of what the actor Robert Hardy did with Castle Ghosts. It's on YouTube, by the way, if people want to have a look, and you'll see what I mean by that sort of style. That's the sort of angle I would pursue. I'm not really into sort of running around buildings at night with infrared cameras, to be quite honest.
Yeah, that's the kind of style because it's so dramatized. I don't think if we're looking at proper mediumship and proper paranormal investigations, I don't think the kind of Blair Witch type thing, running around with cameras and infrared cameras and this and over dramatizing it, that's what I don't like. So I'm not quite a fan of that, but I think good informative shows, absolutely, certainly. But there are, again, within media, I think, because it has to be dramatized, there are a lot of myths which are expounded, and I think that's a great shame. But
it is, Leo. It is. I mean, my dream, because you've already touched on, you mentioned about acting and that. I'd like to do a sort of, because I've mentioned psychic news and I do ghost stories, and I'd like to base a series of programs based on those ghost stories, but reenactments of what happens. Sort of obviously actors playing the parts and that, with perhaps me introducing it and sort of letting the viewer decide, sort of history-based hauntings, from like the Romans in York and things like that. And that'd be a great way to do it. I wouldn't want to be running around York Minster at night with an infrared camera. I'd rather be walking through the streets of York during the day, talking to people who've seen ghosts, looking into the history, the reasons why they may haunt that location, and then let the viewer decide. I don't really want to say, well, this is obviously demonic, and let's get a picture of an orb, and that must be a Roman soldier. I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want a more scientific approach, a more factual. And, it's still entertainment, I know, and as long as people love it, that's fine by me. I mean, each to their own, like I said, these shows have got a big following, but I'd do it slightly different if it was me.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a wonderful play based on a real life story, and it's called The Red Barn. Now, we need to go back a few hundred years for this, perhaps more. And basically what happened...
You mean William Corder?
That's William Calder, yeah.
19th century, Leo. I've written about him. So... famous murder, but sorry, I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, and so he was very wealthy, from a very wealthy family, and he was using the old-fashioned term, courting a young lady, and the family were poor, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she got pregnant. He obviously didn't like this. Yeah, she didn't like the association, so she disappeared. And there was people were a bit concerned, but hey, she was poor, so not much of a fuss. And her mum, I believe it was, unless it was her grandmother, had a dream one night that she had been murdered and she'd been buried in that barn.
It was a stepmom, yeah.
Stepmom, yeah. I knew there was some connection like that. And so basically what she did, she went there and she dug and she found the body. And in those days, paper was very, very expensive. And so one of the ways that news used to travel around was either in song or in the form of plays. And that's how news was distributed, and it sounds very Robin Hood like, doesn't it? And liars and things.
They used to call them penny dreadfuls, Leo.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's that which in the telling, became the play, and I think that's very interesting because people have, for obvious reasons, a great interest in the macabre, don't they? We do like to be frightened, don't we?
We do, yeah. I mean, I did a book, Studies in Scarlet, Victorian Murders. It's out of print now. I know there's copies still knocking around. And that's all about gruesome murders, mainly from the UK. I think there was a couple in there from America. But yeah, people love the macabre. They love reading about, murders, disasters, things like that. And the Red Barn murder was quite interesting because it's not that far from me. The barn's gone now. It was literally picked apart by souvenir hunters at the time.
I'm sure.
But I actually played William Corder on stage, the murderer, but they changed the ending so I didn't get to kill the girl, which basically rewrote history. But that was my first taste of acting. But there's a ghost story connected with William Corder as well, if you want me to quickly tell you.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Yeah, well, what they did, they obviously caught the chap. He was executed. And as a deterrent, they would actually dissect you publicly and then put your skeleton on display because, they thought, you're never going to get resurrected because you haven't had a Christian burial. It was all that sort of that mindset, that will put people off murder. Because it didn't work because people still carried on killing. Yeah. And his skeleton was in display in a hospital, if memory serves. And there was a chap who took a fancy to the skull and he nicked it and replaced it with another skull. And he took the Corder skull home and polished it. I actually wrote about it in Psychic News about a couple of years ago. He polished it so it became like a tortoise shell. And all these weird things started happening in his house. A maid came in. She said, "There's a gentleman wishing to see you in the waiting room, sir. He's wearing funny clothes, though. And, he's wearing old-fashioned clothes from the early part of this century, sir. I don't know what he wants." He'd go there, there'd be no one there. Then there'd be knocks and bangs. He put his skull in a glass case. The glass case shattered and the skull was on the floor. And he got really scared. He was having bad dreams about it. And he decided that obviously the ghost of William Corder wasn't happy that his skull had been nicked. And he couldn't return it to the hospital museum because he'd polished it. So, the skeleton was white. Now the skull was brown. So he bribed someone to bury it in the churchyard. And hopefully William Corder's spirit was happy with that because he was never seen again. But yeah, so I've seen him once, but his ghost never appeared for me, thank God.
Yeah, I think sometimes they do have a bit of a mission, don't they? That they do.
To be honest, though, Lee, I wouldn't be that bothered if someone nicked my skull after my death because I wouldn't be around. So there you go. But that's just me.
Yeah, I don't think I would bother.
Yeah, if you want my skull, Leo, you can have it. I don't mind.
Oh, thank you. Talking of skulls, they used a real skull, didn't they, for Shakespeare's Hamlet?
They did. I remember that. Yeah. And I'm sure that person didn't mind, whoever it was. Because the skulls were revered by the Celts, didn't they? The seat of the soul and everything. So, but people still get spooked about skulls, but it doesn't really bother me, Leo.
No,
I think when your body, when your soul leaves, it's just like discarding a suit, isn't it? It's just your shell that's left.
Absolutely. And I was talking yesterday, actually, on my other show, where they do, people donate their bodies for research, and very kindly. And there was a whole series of tests done, and it's been repeated many times. And they've had a person that was very close to passing, and they'd lie them on very, very accurate weighing scales.
Yeah.
And they'd wait for the moment of passing, and they say it's 3/4 of an ounce, which would be about 21 grams. And upon the instant of passing, the body weighs 21 grams less. And there's obviously a connection. Science, if they're looking at it scientifically, they can't say, well, the light goes out and 21 grams is dropped. They have no real explanation for it, but they do feel that it may be the weight of the soul. I'm not sure about that.
I've read about that, Leo. Yeah, I've read about that. I'm not too sure myself. I mean, I do believe that you survive death. Whether you want to call it spirit, soul, whatever. And obviously, there's so many cases where people have near-death experiences. My uncle, who was born in Lincolnshire, was in a bad motorcycle accident as a teenager, and he was on the operating table and he died. And while he was dead, he had this vision, that he was running up these stairs. And he knew that if he carried going up those stairs, he'd never come back. And he panicked and ran back, and then whoosh, he was back in his body.
Wow.
So how can you explain that? And also, there was another one where a woman was brain dead, or was it a man? It was brain dead on the operating table, and they could actually see everything that was going on in the operating table, everything that was done. And when they were revived, they described it. And the thing was, their eyes had been covered. So how did they know what was going on? And there was another case, again, I can't remember the names, unfortunately, but this woman she died, they were trying to revive her. And when she came to, went shot back into the body. She said, well, that couldn't have been real. She said, because I saw so-and-so waiting for me at the end of this tunnel of light. And because I know she's alive. And then they actually admit, well, actually, no, she died while you were in hospital and we didn't tell you. So to me, that's proof positive, Leo, proof positive. Your soul survives after death, and wherever it goes, I don't know. What happens to it, I don't know. But I think, because you can't destroy energy, and it's energy, isn't it?
It is energy. I know that we move on, and we are of a different vibration. The soul is a higher vibration. I mean, obviously, it's encased in this gross matter. But it moves on, and there are other vibrations where things are as solid there as they are to us here. So that's something that I do understand. But also, matter is made up of atoms, and if you look at any particular substance, yes, it's made up of atoms. But what makes up atoms? Most of that is actually space. So it's this appears to be solid, whatever it might be, a glass or a table or something, but in fact it isn't. So it's just a shift to another vibration, and everything's as solid as it appears.
It's like sort of you're talking about that, it's sort of touching on sort of what happens. I mean, obviously, like, there's the fear of reincarnation, and obviously for some religions it's part of their their belief system. I'm open-minded about reincarnation. I sit on the fence on that one, because obviously I am aware that you can have false memories, and it could be something that you watched as a child on the TV, and then you remember it as if it was yours. Because there was a case where a woman was regressed, and she recounted this story about being in Rome and York. And it was really, really positive, and there was a lot of information there. And then it turned out it was virtually word for word a plot line from a book that she'd obviously read as a kid. But I've regressed myself, Leo, and I've always had this deep interest in the Romans from a kid, and there was no reason for it why I'd have a sense of connection. I was regressed, and I was told that I was the Emperor Julian II. In the Roman period, and the one who tried to reverse Christianity and bring back paganism and fell fighting the Persians. But again, I'm open-minded about it, but was it because, did I read about it as a child, and did I just remember that? It's like the English Civil War. I've had a strong interest in that, and a close affinity with Oliver Cromwell, and I was regressed again, and apparently I was John Lambert, Cromwell's general, and I said all these things that we experienced together, me and Cromwell. But again, part of me thinks, well, is it because of books that I read years ago, and it's just sort of at the back of my mind, and it came out as a living experience, but it wasn't. I don't know, Leo. I'm open-minded. Perhaps I was Julian II. Perhaps I just read it as a book as a kid.
Yeah, I know myself. I've had several past life recalls, and in a probably I can't remember exactly, about 6 to 8 weeks' time. I've got a wonderful gentleman that's coming on called James Clare, and he's written several books. The one that I first got taken with, absolutely fascinated when I read it, is called A Night to Remember, as in Knights of Old, Knight, and it's he's got another book out called What Really Happened at Bannockburn in 1314, and it's subtitled Startling Testimony from Past Life Memories. And the interesting thing about James Clare, if you read the books, there is so much information the information and detail there is absolutely staggering. And I found that with A Night to Remember. And he'd mention, I'm just going to make this up now, but he'd mention a James who was a fourth earl of and his cousin and his wife, and somebody had won this medal or this honour, and they owned this house, and there were so many, and the amount of detail was absolutely staggering. And James was saying that when this book came out, what really happened to Bannockburn in 1314, two historians were absolutely openly sceptical, and they began to read the book back because there is information in this book that people never knew. But he also, what he also does is there are some historic documents apparently, and people have put these together, and he detail by detail takes those stories apart, and he explains why as well. And these two historians emailed him back, and they said they were absolutely gobsmacked.
Right, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for yourself, to read either of these books, there are four that he's got out. So another one's called Town Boy Tales.
I'll check them out.
Yeah, Mad Scots and Englishmen, A Night to Remember. I think either this one, What Really Happened at Bannockburn, or A Night to Remember, you would find absolutely fascinating, because A Night to Remember starts off almost like a film script, and he talks about being on this bank, I think, and he says he's in command of his men and he's looking out and he knows the attack's going to, there's a short window, the attack's going to happen very shortly, it's likely it will happen from this point and that, and he's talking about the knights and the horses and the way that, and it's very film-like, and as you get drawn into it, again, it's a moment by moment recollection of before the battle, during the battle, and what's after. And this book here, What Happens at Bannockburn, is probably an inch thick. A Night to Remember is about the same, but the amount of detail is staggering. So if you're going to read it, or anyone else is going to order this book, A Night to Remember or What Really Happened at Bannockburn, it's by James Clare. And I'm trying to think. I'm trying to find the publisher, because I think it's his publisher. Sarosa Publishing, Saorsa. But it would be interesting to hear what you think, and we'd have you back on the show again, John, to talk about.
I did have a disagreement with someone on Facebook about reincarnation, because they had a moan and they said, "Oh, why is it? It's always got to be famous people like, oh, you're supposed to have been Julian II, the Roman Emperor, and Cromwell in general." And I did point out I'd also been regressed, and I was a humble American Confederate soldier who apparently fell at Gettysburg, also a lowly monk in Lindisfarne, apparently rather bored, and an old man in the desert. So it wasn't always famous people, but I don't know, Lee. I've got an open mind. I think there's more to it than people let on, but I do think perhaps some memories are probably repressed from things that people saw or read as kids, like that one about Roman York. But certainly with me, the Romans, I just felt an immediate connection when I went to St. Albans, that there was no reason for it, and I just felt it was very, very familiar. And that had been the first time I'd ever been to a Roman site. I really looked into the Romans, and it was like that I felt I'd been there before.
Yeah, I think that there usually is a recognition of a connection, and it may just be an area as opposed to any particular building, and so very interesting. Don't really...
Yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah.
I don't really remember readings, but only if it's for my personal to learn or to pass on to students. And I remember doing a reading for a gentleman, it was in Canterbury, and all I could see for this gentleman was the carved Tudor rose. And I was rather embarrassed because I couldn't get past that particular image. So I mentioned this image and I said, it has a connection with you. And he firmly believed that he'd been reincarnated in that time, as I know I have 3 or 4 lifetimes at least. And I then, once I got that acknowledgement, I started to talk to him about different things, which he could take.
Yeah,
So it was confirmation of things that were happening in this life, backing up what he knew to be true.
Yeah.
From that period. So it is interesting.
I've just got a brief message flash up on my screen. A lady called Irene Knox in Kent's listening and enjoying the show, Leo.
Oh, well, thank you, Irene. Bless you. Yeah. Bless you.
You mentioned Night to Remember. There was also the film called Night to Remember with an N about the Titanic. Can I tell you my Titanic story?
You can do after the break. We've got about 2 minutes to go, so we're going to kind of wrap this segment up. But if anyone's interested, if you want to Skype us, or you can join us on the chat line, or you can get us on 0724 259230. I almost lost track. I went a bit dyslexic there. So it's 072 425 9230. So if you want to, that's fine. And if you want John to do, 072. The Americans say it differently. There's a different pacing to it. It says 072 425 9230. If you want a tarot reading, then do ask a question, and John will sort that out for you. We're going straight into the break.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors.
"1 Million Miles Till Midnight." A story of timelines, artificial worlds, simulated races, and the galactic imprint, and the destiny of a blue world called Earth. 1 Million Miles Till Midnight, written by Solaris Blue Raven, is a journey through the mind's eye which allows the reader to surf a wave of technological and multidimensional intellect, revealing a bridge between conscious design and the truth. A multidimensional bleed-through awakens the world of artificial intelligence to set sail into the frontiers of a vast multiverse, morphing planets and terraforming ascended worlds beyond the linear programs of a fated race. 1 Million Miles Till Midnight will awaken, inspire, prepare, and enlighten one to the many multidimensional states of consciousness and worlds we reside in. With every cell and atom, we are this truth and multiverse. 1 Million Miles Till Midnight, written by Solaris Blue Raven. Available now at Amazon.com and GlenNT.com. Don't wait. Get your copy today.
That's
good.
Turn your radio up.
All the music I want to hear.
This is my station.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven.
She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific.
Or hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven.
Solaris Blue Raven.
Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Wanna take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi and welcome back. We're talking to John West. If you've unfortunately just joined us, do listen to the archive. We've been covering a range of subjects with John, including reincarnation, etc. And John's got an interesting story about the Titanic, haven't you, John?
Yes, 1912, April, it sank. It hit the iceberg. Obviously, loads of famous films done about it. I did an article, a two-part article on all the premonitions that people had prior to the sailing and didn't go, and unfortunately survived because of those premonitions. I wrote about it in Psychic News. But no, my grandmother was actually going to sail on the Titanic. She was a girl at the time. And now I was told this story as a kid, so I didn't remember all the names, because now I'd be writing it all down. But basically what it was, a relative was going to go to America to start a new life because my family were poor in London. And she had 2 children. There was no man around. I can't remember if he died or left her. But they were going to go to the States to start a new life. And she said to my great-grandmother that I'll take your daughter to America. You know, she's got nothing here. You know, let me take her and she can start a new life with me and my 2 kids. And her mum basically, you know, got a bad feeling about it. And, you know, felt that something terrible would happen, and she actually told her, "Don't go," you know, because you know I feel something terrible is going to happen, and because she poo-pooed it. And but my grandmother was desperate to go. She wanted to go to America, you know, the glamour of it, you know, another country and all the rest of it. And but no, her mum said, "No, you're not going." And sadly, the other 3, you know, my ancestors went down with the Titanic, and they never found their bodies. But obviously, if my grandmother had gone, I wouldn't have been born.
Yeah, it's funny how spirit intervene in these things. I've been saved several times in my life, and I had a lot of stress when I was young, and at several different points. And at one point, I just thought, I just don't want to be here. And so I wrapped my head in a plastic bag and tied it tight and went to sleep, and woke up next morning quite sweaty and horrible, full of condensation and stuff. But I've been saved several times through traffic accidents not happening. And I was going to school, and I think I was about 8 or 9, and I was just about to step into the road, and I heard someone very loudly call my name. So I stopped and turned round, and as I stopped, a car went whizzing round the corner. So I've been saved. That was quite dramatic. And not too long ago, it would have been I was divorced in 2013. I think it was 2011 or 2012. I'd been to a Christmas party, and the rest of the family were going to walk home, and I thought, well, you know, I'm just going to stay on for a couple of hours. And I stayed on about half hour, and I thought, got to go. And the strange thing is, I knew exactly where I was. I wasn't drunk. Had been drinking, but I wasn't drunk. I don't get drunk. And I needed to get to the bottom of the road, angle left, and 10 minutes away, and that was the house. And for some reason, I turned right. And I found myself walking in the snow. And there was about 3 or 4 inches of snow that particular night. And because the road had been cleared somewhat of snow because of cars, I decided to walk in the road. And I was just approaching this bend, and I heard a voice very, very clearly say to me, you might want to walk on the pavement. And I heard this, and I'm now experienced enough. So I stepped onto the pavement, and seconds later, I was sideswiped by a car. And it knocked me 10 foot into the air into a ditch. And I thought, am I being mugged? Something's going on. So I decided to lay there. And what happened with the car was it carried on another 50 feet. It was a write-off. The whole front end had gone. The front axle had gone. There was oil all over the pavement, and it physically hit something else. And the guy came, and he was okay. He was very shook up because the last thing he saw was me standing in front of him and then nothing. And when I thought things were safe and I stood up, he was physically looking under the car because he thought that's where I was. So that was another case. I've been saved several times in quite a few different ways. And it just, for me, it just goes to say that, you know, we have a purpose here. Very little is going to get in the way of what we need to achieve. And so we are saved at times. So I've got quite a few stories like that.
Yeah, someone's not watching over you, certainly, Leo, and they're watching over my grandmother too. Fortunately, as I said, I wouldn't be here now because she would have gone down with the ship as well, you see, no doubt. So, and even if she had survived, she would have probably ended up in America, and obviously I wouldn't have been born anyway because she would have met some other bloke and the bloodline would have been different. So,
well, yeah. I mean, you could use that. I suppose if she had got to America and she'd had a child, then if you were meant to be born into the family, then you would still have got there, and that's something that I believe. You know, I have done readings for people where they've lost a child a couple of times, and what I tend to do is I give, as you know, John, information. Information. So it's no good just saying, oh, well, you know, you've lost 2 children, but that child is going to come back, you know, because anybody can say that. So what I do is I back that up with confirmation of saying this has happened in your family, or this is a condition you've got, or, you know, so they would understand that. So, well, the reason that's given is because that child you've lost a couple of times is determined to be born to you and will come. And, you know, happily the child has come along at the appointed time.
Oh, good. No, that's good to hear. Yeah. No, I'm a great reason for everything, Leo. And, you know, with my life, things are sort of things that perhaps I didn't think were going to pan out happen for a reason in order to take me a different path. Because look at the acting now, Leo, that I do. I mean, I wouldn't have thought I would have been doing that a few years ago, you know, when I was still married and things like that. So, do you want me to talk about me acting, Leo? Or
yes, talk about that. Yeah, that's fine.
So, well, I'm a self-trained actor. I didn't go to RAD or anything like that. I'm not like John Hurt, unfortunately. I wish I had his money though. But but no, I basically I did act at school and things like that. And I you know, you can say doing a radio show, you know, it's projecting your personality and exaggerating it somewhat. So that's acting. But I got involved in acting quite late again, really. I sort of turned me back on it, and I ended up being in a series called Our Town, which was filmed in Great Yarmouth, where I played this character called Kev, who's basically a bit of an idiot. It's more of a comic character. The way it was originally written by the chap Stephen Farrell, he was quite hard and unloving, and, you know, due credit to the man, he did allow me to sort of redefine the character. And I'll let you into a little secret. I based him a little bit on Stan Laurel. It's that sort of type, you know, a bit of a fool, not too sure what's going on. So that I've done that, and that was great groundwork. I've done a bit of theatre as well. I was in a a period drama called Elizabeth with a chap called Adam Gamage, and we'll probably be acting together again. And most recently, I was in a Detectorist as well, a BBC 4 series with Mackenzie Crook of the Pirates of the Caribbean fame.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Played a site foreman, but unfortunately, and I'm very miffed with Mackenzie over this, most of my scenes were cut, and all this lovely dialogue and close-ups, and they cut me to drop in bits about Toby Jones. Can you believe it, Leo?
Well, I know how it works because I was an extra in a film that I invested some money in, quite sadly, it was called Charlie, about Charlie Richardson, who was around at the time of the craze, obviously, and they were opposing gangs, and it's you sit around all day. It's 12-hour day, and then it's action. Everything's supposed to start, and they film the same thing from half a dozen different angles, and it seems quite long, but it's only sometimes just milliseconds on screen. But I got I was spotted in one scene, and the rest was all cut.
Hat. You had a lovely hat, Leo, in that scene. It was wonderful. I don't know about the film being wonderful, with all due respect to the bloke who played Mr. Richardson, but yeah, I did remember your hat. But there you go. It happened. But the next things I've got planned, I've filmed a drama which I wrote in Borley, the site directory. And that's called The Last Journey, and it's a. I won't let you into the plot because it's yet to be released. It's being edited. I'm going to see the rough cut, but it's a love story, a ghost story. That's all I can really say. And it's with a chap called Pete Jennings, who was actually president of the Pagan Federation in the UK, and he was a BBC presenter. And also a lovely lady, Catherine Nichols, who's an actress and model, and she plays my leading lady in it. But I'm looking to do some more dramas based on ghost stories I did for Psychic News, either acting in them or writing them, or perhaps even a bit of directing. And I'll be taking it down that route, perhaps, some further sort of acting career wise. And I'll be getting people in that I've worked with, like Adam Gamage and that, to play interesting characters, and obviously Catherine Nichols, and should be great. Perhaps films even, develop into a film, or perhaps a half-hour drama. I don't know, but it's all looking good, Leo. It's all looking good.
Well, I shall certainly say prayers for you.
Thank you.
Tell us how you got into tarot, and are there any particular packs that you like, or any formations?
Oh, right. Well, the tarot, I got into that as a kid, reading about it in all the mystical books and that, and I just was intrigued by sort of predicting the future. My version of the tarot is based on is it the Marseille version? Is it Marseille tarot?
I'm not too into tarot.
My mind's gone blank, Leo. But anyway, it's based on the old style one with sort of medieval figures in it. And so that's the version I prefer. But there's loads of different tarot packs out there. I've got also a set of oracle cards, which I don't use that often, but they're all based on the same format. So it doesn't I wouldn't recommend one over the other. It's just basically Aleister Crowley did his version, which is very good. Where they called him a black magician. Whether he really was, I don't know. He obviously did embrace the dark side a little bit. But he designed a pack, but there's packs being designed all the time, isn't there? Apparently Sean Connery's first wife was a tarot reader, and she designed a tarot pack as well.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. Aleister Crowley was known as the King of Witches. He was a very, very powerful witch himself.
And he was a naughty lad as well, very naughty.
He was, and there was some talk about him being involved with the Rolling Stones and helping them with their success, and then the Hells Angels thing got in there, and there was a whole thing there. But so he was known as the King of Witches, and I think he passed away in the 1930s. He used a lot of his power to gain power and also wealth, and he had a huge home up in Scotland, and I remember sorry
near Loch Ness. I think he actually died. He became a drug addict in later life, and he died penniless in a bedsit in Hastings, and I think it was the 1940s actually. But he did have a house in Scotland, and I could be wrong, but I'm sure that I think the bloke from Led Zeppelin bought it or something. It was supposed to be haunted.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I saw a black and white documentary, and he was being followed by this reporter, and the reporter was actually quite mocking in places, and he asked Aleister Crowley to demonstrate his power. And I don't know if this is on YouTube. It'd be wonderful to see the documentary again. And in this small part where he says, well, you know, what can you do to prove? And they were walking along the street, and Aleister Crowley looked ahead, and the camera turned, and there's a guy walking along, and Aleister Crowley started to imitate his walk, his gait.
He did.
And he was aping that, and they were perfect. They were probably 20 feet apart from what I remember, and they were perfectly in sync as they were walking along. And Aleister Crowley then dropped to his knee, and the guy went bang, flat over on his face.
That is true. That is true. And there's a good book on Crowley, or some people call him Crowley as well.
Crowley, yeah.
Written by Colin Wilson. I don't think it's in print now, but I regard that as one of the best books written about him. So if any of your listeners want to find out a bit more about him, then Colin Wilson books probably. I think it's called The Nature of the Beast by Colin Wilson. But it is an interesting experiment what he did. I've tried that, not making people fall over, but when I used to go on the bus before I got my car, I used to sort of be people in front, and as an experiment sometimes I'd stare at the back of their head intently, and 9 times out of 10 they wouldn't see me reflection in front, but I hasten to add, but 9 times out of 10 they'd suddenly whip round, as if they were aware someone was looking at them. Now whether that's a sense or whether I was making, I don't know. But sometimes I still occasionally do it. It does work 9 times out of 10. So, but I'm not trying to make out I'm like him though. I'm not a black magician, I promise.
Yeah, no, I mean there is that sense of pushing energy out, and of course that's something that happens when you're in a haunted building, and there's a spirit or ghost. An interactive one that is trying to make a connection with you for whether it's trying to frighten you away, or whether it's just wanting you to feel its power, or whether it's just curious. And again, this goes back to the sixth sense that we've had since, caveman days, of some present danger, which we can't see, we don't know, we know we've got to act, and it all goes back to that kind of feeling. I know I saw a program on the Krays, and Ronnie Kray was he had severe mental problems. Let's just put it that way. But in this documentary, I think he was actually interviewing with him. I'm not sure. Can't be sure now. But he used to say that he used to do that to people, to throw them, to phase them. So, as you know, it is something that works. And I know that with what Aleister Crowley was doing, was he was linking his energy, so he was in sync, and he was getting that flow and carrying the flow, and then disturbing it his end and causing upset with that gentleman. But it was fascinating to watch that. If I think I might afterwards. Try and find that on YouTube if there is. Yeah, you can get copies of his books, because he was quite an author as well. And
he was, and as I said, he designed his own pack of tarot.
Yeah. So interesting.
Character. I don't know whether I would have liked to have had him as a friend though, because I don't think he was a very nice person deep down. I think he dipped his toe too many times into that sort of dark energy, to be quite frank. And
absolutely.
No, but there you go. There again, perhaps karma got him in the end, because look what happened to him. He ended up as a drug addict with no money in someone else's property.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it right if I give out my website address, Leo, if people want to check?
Absolutely. I was just about to ask you.
Well, you are psychic. I'm sure you picked that up, yeah? It's www.johnwestmedia.com, and all the information's on there about me, and hopefully people might say hello. I've got a blog on there as well. You can message me. So it's johnwestmedia.com.
Fantastic. So if anyone wants to contact John, I'm sure you've got a list of books on there that you've authored. They may want to read in. I'm sure they will. Or again, any offers of shows in the States, acting parts? I'm sure that you'd welcome them. So that would be fantastic.
The other thing I do as well, Leo, is photography as well. So there's a little section on there about my photographic work. I had my first exhibition earlier this year, and in Saxmundham, and I did sell a couple of them. I love taking photographs of sort of old buildings, ruins, and things like that. And I love the black and white medium as well. But I don't try to get pictures of ghosts or anything like that. I leave that to others.
Yeah, I can understand that. Now we're getting to towards the end of the show. I can't believe 2 hours has gone so quick.
What a shame! I really enjoyed it, Leo. And can I just say thank you to Tina Marie, your producer, because I think she's wonderful too.
Oh, bless. We've still got a couple of minutes, so don't pop off just yet. So something else that I've learned quite recently, and it just goes to prove I'm not nosy. You know, look, some mediums, especially when they're new, they want to link into everybody and find out everything, and I'm not like that. So I was quite surprised to see that actually you're a musician as well. You play guitar and you do gig. Yeah. So again, that was quite a surprise. So have you been doing that long, and do you enjoy it?
I don't mind it. I mean, I've been doing some paid gigs singing. I've got actually a paid gig every month for the rest of this year. Johnny Mathis, the Beatles, the Monkees, bit of Elvis. I don't think I'd want to pursue that, though, because a medium did actually say to me quite recently, you know, don't spread yourself too thinly, concentrate on the things that really matter. And also one of the top directors, Jane Gull, she's an independent film director making a big name for herself now. She said to me as well, you know, don't spread yourself too thinly, concentrate on. So I think I'm going to sort of concentrate more on the TV work and the writing and stuff like that, rather than sort of all this theatre and musicianship and that, because you can only do so much, Leo. And you know, and I did think I was spreading myself too thinly at one point.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to sort of curb some of it. I think everyone needs a hobby. I used to play guitar for 12 years or so, really enjoyed it, and then just kind of went off it. And I think the reason for me was I was asked to join bands, and I think if I'd taken that option, my life would have been very, very different. So again, I think that there was a protection there, if you like, of saying no, don't do that. And,
same with me, Leo. I was offered the chance to be in a band like Madness, and I turned it down. And again, who knows, if I had done it, might have taken me in a totally different direction. There's a reason for everything, you know. The wrong decisions I made actually turned out to be the right decisions because they pushed me into another direction, you know.
Absolutely. I remember many years ago a girlfriend I had, and we were in a club, and she asked me a perfectly innocent question: "Are you coming over for Sunday dinner?" And I was immediately lifted out of my body, and I could hear myself breaking up with her.
Yeah.
And thinking, what the hell is happening? And I didn't understand this. And of course, the breakup was done, and I got plonked back in my body, and I didn't know what to say because I'd heard myself doing this, and I couldn't say, "Oh, it was a joke," you know. But I realised that what Spirit had done at that particular point in time was to remind me my life needed to go a different way. So Spirit don't take away free will, but they sometimes have to forcefully remind us of promises we've made. And I think that was the same with you. You know, that kind of things happened several times in my life.
And with me, Leo, and with me, it's like I said, I was working for the museum service. I got the push, ended up working at the library. hated it, but ended up getting that break in radio because of it. But if I hadn't have got the push from the museum service because they were taken over by someone else and they didn't want the old staff, I could still be working there now, perhaps in a senior position, but doing nothing in the way I'm doing now. You know, not talking to you on here, not writing in America for Psychic News, you know, not being on the radio, not doing all this acting and this TV series I'm going to be doing that's going to be shown in America. So that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't got rid of me at the museum. So,
I've got to say, fantastic, and we've got to close now. It's been wonderful. We'll have you back on, and thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.